Well, now the African Rail Industry Association says it's more urgent than ever for Transnet to implement the national rail policy. This comes after the resignation of Transnet Group CEO Portia and CFO Nonkululeko Dlamini. Various business chambers, the Minerals Council and labour unions have been calling for Transnet leadership to be shown the door. Transnet's rail activities have experienced a decline, witnessing a 13.6% drop in recent volumes. Transnet, which previously reported a significant loss of 5.7 billion rand for the year ending March 2023 and is weighed down by a soaring debt of 130.1 billion rand. But for more on this, we are joined on the line by the CEO of the African Rail Industry Association, Mesela Kope-Nhlapo. And we're also hoping to be joined in a short while by the Association of South African Chambers, Melanie Veness. So let's start our conversation now. And Mesela is joining us on the beginning. It's great to have you. Thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning to South Africa.
Let's begin here. Do you think there's some relief in many quarters about the exit of the Transnet Group CEO Portia and the CFO from Transnet?
I think it's a new dawn for many people, but we are solution based, as I've said before, and we think that Transnet will survive under the following conditions. One, to be honest and transparent on the true state of the national track infrastructure and the investment that is needed to repair to its design condition that is approved by the Railway Safety Regulator. Engage with the NLCC in good faith and seek meaningful and lasting reforms that will address the collapse of the rail infrastructure. The interim regulator, as set out in the National Rail Policy, should be made responsible for overseeing negotiations between Transnet and private sector. Bring back, for number 4, to bring back the staff with strong rail freight operation capability and focus on the grassroots operational efficiency, making the customer a solution that is customer-centered. And number 5, reinstall multi-network operating system and install a fleet-wide tracking system to remove the opportunity for ghost trains and the fraudulent manipulation of the tracking fraudulent and manipulation of the trains. Recruit a replacement CEO who will be able to transition Transnet from a closed monopoly to a reconfigured, open and transformed organization. This is in line with the National Rail Policy. ARIA has always put up its hand with key stakeholders in finding improvement that are so urgently needed. With Transnet being now an ARIA member, we will be able to the time has come to have all the rail interests aligned. We have a Transnet that has a permanent seat on our board. We're hoping that through these conditions that I've just outlined, that yes, absolutely, rail is going to come back and come back very strong.
But the challenges that are facing Transnet, I mean, it's not much different to before the group CEO joined. I mean, we know that with Portia there were more issues, but with the CFO, there were more issues as well. But this is nothing new. And why suddenly do you believe that this step of getting rid of them and having these leaders gone, things are going to change? Because it just appears that even if they were there or the greatest new CEOs come in, there's still going to be major issues at Transnet. There seems to be something much deeper there in terms of not only leadership, but major interference.
I'm not sure about interference, and I'm not privy to the interference that is alleged to have taken place. But where I'm looking is that with the National Crisis Logistic Crisis Committee, with ARIA sitting on the table with Transnet, that will ARA will be the glue between private sector and Transnet to make sure that we are able not to interfere, but actually to be partners. So the rule of civilization plays a strong role, and that rule is cooperation. So that cooperation with private sector will be meaningful. We work with the mining industry, we work with the automotive industry, multiple industries that are very important to the economy of the country. So from that point of view, whether there is interference or not, but we are taking a different stance. We are saying that freight must go back on rail to ensure that those Section 189 that are talked about are reversed and preserve jobs before we start talking about creating new jobs. Sustainability and creating new jobs is key.
All right, let's bring Melanie into the conversation. Melanie is the chairperson of the Association of South African Chambers. I'm glad that we've got you up on the line to get into the interview. Do you think bringing in more capable leaders from the private sector will make a big operational difference at Transnet, bringing in obviously the skills that are needed, getting private assistance in, also the departure of the CEO and the CFO. Do you think these are the things that perhaps are needed to turn Transnet around?
Oh, absolutely. We need to bring in adequate skills, and we need to take action. I think what we want to see is action on the ground. You know, we've had a lot of plans in the past, and what we haven't seen is good implementation. We should never find ourselves in a situation as bad as we find ourselves in now. I think it's going to take a collaboration, and it's going to take skills. But I think more than that, it's going to take accountability. And I think that's something that's been sorely lacking, is accountability.
It certainly has. And I mean, while I'm talking to you now, I just see an alert coming through from News 24, who've done an investigation into Transnet again. And they're saying, and this is just one, and we talk to the corruption and we talk to things that are going wrong. Transnet paid 29 Rand per breathalyzer straw instead of 28 cents. This was in a 33 million Rand tender. That's just one aspect that's just that they just spoke about it now. That's like a 10,000% markup. I mean, these things have led to the demise of the rail infrastructure in South Africa. So you get rid of leaders, you get private to come in, but how do you dig this deep? Because you can see how deep the corruption is. I'm going to stay with you, Melanie, for this one, and where the fraud and the tender processes come in. Let's perhaps address this.
Well, it's not going to come right, and I think corruption is at the root of a lot of South Africans' problems. You know, we see the stuff come out in the media, but then we don't see accountability. You don't see people being arrested. You don't see people paying the price for it. And that's unacceptable. We will never work ourselves out of this hole until we start seeing people paying for the corruption that they've perpetrated against the whole of South Africa. I mean, it's the consequences of this behavior is unbelievable. I mean, we're losing a billion Rand a day because of Transnet's failures. And that costs every South African. So it's completely unacceptable. And what we don't want to see in this situation is that we just move people around like chess pieces on a board, and at the end of the day, nobody's held accountable and nothing changes. We want to see proper action taken in our SOEs, because the consequences of not doing that are completely unacceptable, and it's dire. We can't afford it.
And that's the consequence of a stumbling economy as well, where we have roads that are falling apart, that we're having a trucking industry. Unfortunately, there's lots of rumors around trucking industry and some of the shenanigans and corruption that's going on there. And this is all because of the desperation of companies to transport their goods and all of the issues that are associated with that, purely because there is not a sufficient and good railway system. Let's sort of look, and I'm going to stay with you for this as well, Melanie. If we could talk to how things would change and how the landscape would look if we had an efficient Transnet working.
Oh, totally different. You know, I think it talks to an enabling environment. How business cannot compete if if we have a logistics network that is one of the poorest in the world. That's we have electricity challenges. We have a lot stacked against us. I think looking at the figures, the economists are saying that Transnet's failures are currently costing the country 5% in GDP. I mean, if you can just imagine what that would do to our ability to compete, what it would do to our ability to be able to employ, to grow. It's serious. It's not a small difference to the economy. It's 5%. 5% makes all the difference.
Yeah, it's a very, very big one. And my sort of last question to you before I move on is, we've obviously seen a lot of the issues around leadership, the CEO gone, the CFO is gone, the stability within these state-owned entities, and Transnet to be specific here, because that's what we're talking about. How bad is it? I mean, in terms of regaining stability, and how difficult is this going to be?
Well, it also depends on the foundation, doesn't it? I mean, you've made some very good points about Transnet. If there is not a structure underneath that a new leader can come in and work appropriately with, then we aren't going to gain any ground. So what you want to see is some serious action being taken. I mean, we are very grateful for the fact that we have seen some action. It gives us hope, but as you've said, it's an organization in crisis, and it's more than just the top leadership that needs addressing. So we certainly hope that this is a start of undertaking some serious revamp in the interests of South Africa.
Yeah. Mesela, I feel like we've said this before. We're always living in hope that things will change, and then we'll end up coming back here and having the same conversation of how things didn't go right. But we still live in hope. That's what we have. But let me ask you, Mesela, what must the board do to find a credible person quickly, and that we don't come back here and have the same conversation?
Well, firstly, with the board, they must appoint a technical somebody on the board, because currently we don't have somebody who is technically inclined in the railways within the board. Then two, with the upcoming CEOs, I think this is very important. As much as we put pressure on people to be removed from their positions, we must be equally be responsible to make sure that we don't influence the process of the appointment of the new CEO. The CEO is just one person. The 50,000 and the rest of the industry is the main concern. That is the grassroots level. Talking of Wombit, Wabudladla, those are the people that make the rail industry, not an individual. But hands on deck, boots on the ground is the entire rail industry. We work together, one rail industry that will be facilitated by the African Rail Industry Association.
And the issue as well is, I mean, there were reports last week with a lot of people looking at this Transnet and saying that it is literally on the verge of collapsing. And this is a worry, because, I mean, this is probably one of the, in the most dire position, Transnet alongside Eskom. These are these two state entities we look at in and amongst the rest of them, but these ones really stand out as ones that are struggling. There's been a lot of unhappiness in government and the business sector over Transnet's slow implementation as well of a cabinet directive to open more of its rail network to private sector. This is the operators out there, and this is a crucial economic reform for the country. Is a commercially viable investment by the private sector vital to stimulate development and create meaningful reform that would allow freight railway transportation to take its meaningful place? Let me pose that one to you, Mesela, and we can, if we've got time, we can get you to comment as well, Melanie.
Yeah. Look, from 2018, we had 226 million tons being transported. So that was under a different leadership. Perhaps it's about to go back to that, what was done differently then that we can implement now. And now in 2023, we're looking at 149 million tons. So if we don't act fast and if we don't implement the conditions that I have mentioned earlier, then we would fail. But with business being involved at the moment, having Transnet on our board, having the business support the government through the NLCC, that is a major milestone. We can only achieve this if government and private sector. It is not a marriage of convenience, but it's a marriage that's supposed to be sustained to make sure that nothing collapses in the industry. Whether we're talking about Eskom and any other SOEs, it's to be involved as South African and stop complaining, work with government to make sure that we achieve the best for our country.
All right, ladies, unfortunately having to leave it there, we're out of time, but thank you. Thanks for talking to us about the situation at Transnet. Mesela Kope-Nhlapo, the CEO of the African Rail Industry Association and chairperson of the Association of South African Chambers, Melanie Veness, talking to us there about Transnet.